The rain had not stopped for 3 days when Elira Voss found the wolf. She had gone out at dusk to gather the last of her wet weather herbs, the ones that only grew stronger when the sky wept. The village of Hallow Creek sat at the edge of the Blackthorn Woods, and most people there kept far away from the tree line after dark. They said the woods belonged to wolves, and that the wolves belonged to a king no one had ever seen. Elira did not fear the woods. She feared very little, in truth, because there was little left in her life to lose. Her parents were gone. Her small cottage stood apart from the village, half forgotten by people who only remembered her when they needed medicine for a fever or a burn. She had grown used to being overlooked. She told herself she preferred it that way. It was the sound that stopped her that evening, a low, ragged breathing coming from behind a fallen log. She almost turned back. Almost. But something about the sound, so pained and so alone, pulled at her the way a wounded bird might. She found him there, half hidden in the mud. A wolf, but larger than any she had ever seen, with fur the color of storm clouds and a wound along his side that glistened dark and wrong in the fading light. His breathing was shallow. His eyes, when they opened and found hers, held something that did not belong in the eyes of an animal. It looked almost like a plea. She should have run. Everyone would have told her to run. Instead, she knelt in the mud beside him and said quietly, "It's all right. I won't hurt you." The wolf did not attack her. He did not even flinch when she pressed her hands gently along his side to find the source of the bleeding. He simply watched her, his breath slowing, as though her voice alone had eased something in him. Getting him back to her cottage took the better part of an hour. He was too weak to fight her, though she suspected that under normal circumstances, an animal that size could have ended her life in a single moment. She half dragged, half guided him through the trees, murmuring softly the whole way, the same way she spoke to frightened patients who came to her table with wounds too big for their bodies to understand. By the time she got him inside, laid him near the fire, and began cleaning the wound properly, night had fully fallen. The cut was deep, and there was something strange about it, a faint silvery tinge to the edges, as though it had been made by something more than a simple blade. She did not know what it meant. She only knew it needed tending, so she tended it, the way she had tended every broken thing that had ever come to her door. He stayed silent through it all, save for the occasional low sound of pain when her hands pressed too firmly. When she finished wrapping the wound, she sat back on her heels and looked at him properly for the first time. "You're a strange one," she whispered. "Most wild things would have bitten my hand off by now." The wolf only stared back at her, and for a moment, she could have sworn there was something almost like gratitude in his gaze. She did not know, of course, that the creature lying by her fire was not simply a wolf. She did not know that he was Cade Ashbourne, Alpha King of the Moonfall Pack, betrayed 3 nights earlier by the very man who had once sworn to protect him. She did not know that a coin of silver had nearly ended his life, or that he had run through the woods in wolf form for miles, bleeding and half-conscious, searching only for somewhere safe to fall. He had not expected to find kindness. He had expected to die alone in the mud. Instead, he had found her. Cade could have shifted back to his human form the moment his strength allowed it. He knew this. But something kept him from doing so, some instinct deeper than caution, telling him that if she learned what he truly was, everything would change. And so he stayed silent, stayed a wolf, and let her tend him without knowing the truth. Over the following days, Elira found herself talking to him more than she meant to. She had always spoken to the animals that wandered near her home, the birds, the foxes, even the stray cats that begged for scraps. But this was different. The wolf listened in a way none of them ever had. When she muttered about the village women who whispered behind her back, he tilted his head as if he understood every word. When she sighed over the loneliness of her evenings, he moved closer, resting his heavy head against her knee. "You're a good listener," she told him one night, running her fingers through the fur at his neck. "Better than most people, honestly." If a wolf could laugh, she thought he might have. Cade, for his part, found himself unable to look away from her. He was a king who had spent his life surrounded by flattery, by pack members who agreed with him simply because he held power over their lives. No one spoke to him the way Elira did, freely, honestly, without expecting anything in return. She did not know she was confiding in a king. She thought she was simply talking to a wolf who could not answer back. And that, more than anything, was what made her words so precious to him. They were true. He began to heal quickly, faster than any ordinary wound should allow, though Illyra credited this to her herbs rather than the truth, that a king's body mended faster than a common wolf's. Still, he lingered in her cottage far longer than his healing required. He told himself it was only prudent, that Draven's men were surely still searching the woods for him, that it was safer to stay hidden a while longer. He did not let himself examine too closely why leaving felt harder with each passing day. Trouble found them on the 6th day. Illyra had gone into the village to trade herbs for bread and oil, leaving the wolf resting by the fire as she always did. She noticed immediately that something was wrong. Armed men moved through the streets, their eyes sharp and searching, asking questions of everyone they passed. "Have you seen a large gray wolf?" one of them asked her, his voice edged with impatience. "Bigger than any natural beast. Wounded, likely. It's dangerous. Has attacked several travelers in the woods." Illyra's stomach turned cold. She thought of the wolf, resting peacefully by her fire, gentle as a lamb despite his size, and she knew without needing to be told that these men were lying. A wolf that gentle had attacked no one. "No," she said carefully. "I haven't seen anything like that." The man studied her for a long moment, and she forced herself to hold his gaze, to keep her hands steady at her sides. Finally, he grunted and moved on to question someone else. She hurried home as fast as she dared, without drawing attention, her heart pounding the entire way. When she burst through her door, the wolf lifted his head sharply, sensing her fear before she even spoke. "There are men looking for you," she said, kneeling beside him. "They said you were dangerous, but that's a lie, isn't it? I don't know how I know that, but I do." The wolf made a low sound in his throat, something between a whine and a growl, and pressed his head against her chest as though trying to comfort her. "I won't let them find you," she whispered fiercely. "Whatever you are, whoever's hunting you, I won't let them take you." That night, unable to bear the weight of her trust any longer, Cade made his choice. He waited until she had settled by the fire, exhaustion finally pulling her toward sleep, and then he did something he had not done in her presence since the night she found him. Slowly, painfully, he let his body shift. Fur receded into skin. Paws lengthened into hands. By the time Illyra's eyes fluttered open at the strange sound beside her, she found not a wolf, but a man, tall, strong, with the same storm-gray eyes that had watched her so intently for days. She scrambled back with a gasp, pressing herself against the wall. "What? How?" "Please," he said quickly, holding up his hands, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing wound. "Don't be afraid. I would never hurt you. You know that already, don't you? You've known me for 6 days." "I've known a wolf for 6 days," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know you at all." "My name is Cade," he said quietly. "Cade Ashbourne. I am the Alpha King of the Moonfall Pack." He watched her face carefully as he spoke, bracing for the fear, the sudden distance, the way people always changed once they learned what he truly was. The men searching the village. They were sent by my own beta, Draven. He tried to have me killed 3 nights ago, so he could take my throne. I ran here, wounded, and you saved my life without knowing any of it. Illyra stared at him, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. A king. She had been feeding broth to a king, scolding a king for tracking mud through her cottage, crying quietly in front of a king when she thought no one could understand her. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked finally. "Because everyone who has ever known what I am has wanted something from me," he said, his voice rough. "Power, protection, favor. You wanted nothing. You gave me kindness, with no idea it could ever be repaid. I have never had that before. I was not ready to lose it." Something in his voice, raw and unguarded, softened the fear in her chest. This was still the same creature who had rested his head against her knee, who had listened to every quiet confession she had never meant to speak aloud. "You should have told me," she said again, but gentler now. "But I understand why you didn't." They did not sleep again that night. Instead, they talked, truly talked, for the first time as equals rather than as woman and wolf. Cade told her of Draven's betrayal, of the silver blade meant to end him, of a pack now under the control of a man who ruled through fear rather than loyalty. Illyra told him of her own losses, of a life spent on the edges of a village that never fully welcomed her. By morning, they had a plan. Cade was strong enough now to fight, and Illyra, with her knowledge of the woods and its hidden paths, knew ways through Blackthorn that Draven's men had never mapped. Together they slipped past the search parties, moving swiftly toward Moonfall territory, where Cade intended to reveal Draven's betrayal before the Pack Elders. The confrontation, when it came, was swift. Draven, confident that his king was dead, had not prepared for Cade's return. Before the assembled elders, Cade laid out the truth, the silver blade, the ambush, the lies spread through the village. Draven's denials crumbled under the weight of evidence, and the simple, undeniable fact that the king stood before them, alive. The pack's judgment was swift and final. Draven's claim to power collapsed entirely, and the elders reaffirmed Cade as their rightful Alpha King. In the days that followed, as order returned to Moonfall, Cade could have returned easily to his old life, to politics, to duty, to the careful distance he had always kept between himself and those around him. Instead, he sought out Illyra, who had quietly returned to her cottage, uncertain of her place in a world so far above her own. He found her exactly where he had first come to know her, by her fire, herbs drying overhead, hands busy with quiet, humble work. "I could give you anything," he told her, kneeling before her the way she had once knelt before him in the mud. "Wealth, position, a place at court. But none of that is what saved my life. It was you, just you, asking nothing in return." Illyra's eyes filled with tears she did not try to hide. "I didn't save a king," she said softly. "I saved a wolf who needed help. I would have done it for anyone." "I know," he said. "That is exactly why it mattered." He asked her, then, before the fire that had first warmed his wounds, to stand beside him not as a subject, but as his chosen mate, the Queen of Moonfall, not for her name or her status, but for the quiet, unwavering kindness that had asked for nothing and given everything. Illyra Voss, once invisible to the world around her, said yes. And when the pack gathered weeks later to witness their bond, no one who looked upon their king could doubt the truth in his eyes, that the greatest strength he had ever found was not in his crown, but in the gentle hands of a woman who had once knelt in the rain to save a stranger who could not even speak her name.